Good evening. Welcome to the Ogden City Council meeting for September 11th, 2012. Let the roll call reflect that all council members are present, and we'll ask Vice Chair Blair to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And as many of you are aware, 11 years ago today was a terrible tragedy in our community, in our nation. So as we have a moment of silence, I'll ask you to please remember those that suffered during the 9/11 event 11 years ago. And at this time, we'll have a moment of silence. Thank you. Thank you. We have an item of recognition, the first item on the agenda, and recognizing Weber State, and we'll ask Vice Chair Blair to read the proposed joint resolution.
Okay, thank you. This is Joint Resolution 2012-5, encouraging our community to become actively involved with the 2012 Weber State University football season and other university events. Whereas, Weber State University provides countless activities that enhance community spirit and unity. Weber State and Ogden City are partnering together in a number of ways to encourage residents to be actively involved in university events and to support our Wildcat teams. And whereas, current efforts are underway to help Ogden to become a college town. The purpose of this collaborative effort is to define what this means and to better incorporate Weber State into the everyday lives of our community. And whereas, Weber State worked with the city to hold a public safety officials night following the tragic police shooting on January 5th, 2012, where 5 members of the Weber Morgan Narcotics Strike Force were shot and Agent Jared Frankham lost his life. Complimentary tickets were provided to all public safety officials and their family members to attend a men's basketball game. And whereas on June 28th, 2012, Weber State and Ogden City hosted a Damian Lillard Draft Day celebration. This event was held in conjunction with the 2012 NBA Draft to support Weber State basketball star Damian Lillard, who was selected by the Portland Trail Blazers as the 6th overall pick in the draft. This event was a huge success and sparked interest to bring more Weber State activities downtown. And whereas Football Fridays events have been scheduled at the Junction throughout this year's football season, these pep rally events will be held the Friday before each home game on the following dates: September 14th, 2012, September 21st, 2012, October 5th, 2012, November 2nd, and November 9th, 2012. And whereas these pep rallies will provide a great opportunity for Weber State fans to prepare for and become involved with all of this year's home football games. The intention is to prompt our community's involvement in numerous events throughout the school year as well. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Ogden City Council and Mayor Michael P. Caldwell proudly support Weber State University and encourage our community to attend upcoming Football Fridays events. We are grateful for all the contributions that Weber State makes in our community and wish its teams and players much success in their upcoming seasons. Go Wildcats. And with that, I will make a motion that we adopt Joint Resolution 2012-5.
Second.
We have a motion from Vice Chair Blair and a second from Councilmember Heyer to adopt Resolution 2012-5. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? This passes. And
with that, we'd like to present this to Becky Thompson, who's here on behalf of the university and their athletic association. There's
want a big group picture here with you.
Okay. Up. Oh, you can stay down here or whichever. You come. I was calling the mayor. It's okay. But we don't care. You can do whatever. Okay, am I good here? Yes. 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2.
Becky, do you want to say? Yes, thank you.
Well, on behalf of Weber State Athletic Department, thank you very much for this resolution. I'm happy to accept it, and thank you to Mayor Caldwell and the council for this honor. We're excited to partner with Ogden City whenever we can, so thank you very much, and it's great to see all of you in purple, and go Wildcats.
Thank you, and congratulations.
I make a prediction. I think they're going to win this Saturday.
Oh, good. They played well last week. So next on our agenda is public hearings. First on the agenda is West Ogden annexation. Mr. Montgomery.
Mr. Chair and members of the council, you are receiving tonight and considering a recommendation from the Planning Commission, which they reviewed back in February of this year, and that was a petition to annex property into Ogden City. I just want to give a little background first. The map I have up is what we call our policy declaration or annexation declaration. Back in the late 70s, state law required that every city declare where they would see their boundaries expanding in the future. And so since that point, every city has been following that determination that was made back then of we can service this area, another community can service this area, with the goal of eliminating islands and peninsulas that Weber County has throughout the lower valley. And that was the intent of state law, saying that the delivery of services and the like should be taking place in municipalities and not in the county. And so this annexation declaration has been something we've been following ever since, that we've been trying to eliminate in different areas of the city. And as you can see, each area has its designations of its characteristics and what we'd be trying to do. So when this petition came in, the very first thing we look at is this an area that we can service? And the petition we're considering is in this area 7. So it is identified that Ogden City is the community that can provide services in terms of water, police, fire, the various types of municipal services that take place when someone wants to do development. See, the lights aren't. There we go.
There you go.
Okay. So I want to give you that background first of when we look at an annexation, what is it we're looking at? So as a specific petition comes in, and in this case the petition that came in was to annex this property located on Midland Drive. And as you can see, city boundaries presently are in this area and go up and around into this area also, and then they're over in here. So we've got what we call peninsulas in this location. State law says we should try to eliminate peninsulas, and so when the annexation came in, there was, according to state law, that we felt this is appropriate to consider this. And so the Planning Commission looked at it and determined that we are the individuals who can provide service. We have the water system in Midland Drive. We've taken over what Bonta Vista had. That's all Ogden City water now. We've done line upgrades at 3300 to help provide better pressure in these lines as development takes place. And in reality, Weber County will not process plans for development in these areas that we've declared. And so the owner of the property petitioned to have it annexed now so that whoever bought the property in the future, whoever wanted to develop it, had one step already taken care of in the development process, putting it in the right jurisdiction who would do a review of any development. So the Planning Commission looked at this in terms of the community policies, that this was consistent with our annexation declaration, this was consistent with services that can be provided, and as they reviewed it, felt it would be appropriate to annex this property. When annexation takes place, though, one of the questions that comes up is what is the appropriate zoning for property? And so that is another consideration the Planning Commission forwards on to you, is would be the appropriate zoning. Presently, you can see that on the northwest side of Midland Drive, it's zoned M2 in Ogden City. Across the tracks, it is zoned M1 in Ogden City. And again, M2 on this side of the tracks, M1 on this side of the tracks. The discussion was what would be the appropriate zoning for this area. The staff had recommended that M2 zoning, so it would be consistent on both sides of the street, would be the appropriate zoning. And in their recommendation has suggested that take place. And as you look at the recommendation from the Planning Commission, you'll find that the majority of the commissioners felt that the M2 zoning would also be appropriate. There was some discussion, however, about is M2 or M1 more of an appropriate zone? And the reason that came about was, as you see, even though this property would be annexed, there's still unincorporated property in this area to the east that is still in the Weber County, and it is zoned M1 in Weber County. And there are several homes that are along this area, and those who live here came to the Planning Commission concerned about this property being annexed and what potentially could take place there. Just a little background. In Weber County, M1 zoning allows a myriad of things. M1 zoning allows homes as well as manufacturing uses. In Ogden City, manufacturing zoning does not allow homes. Homes are non-conforming. It is felt that the industrial uses that take place in M2 zone, M1 zone, are not compatible to dwellings, though we do have lots of areas that are zone manufactured and have homes in it in Ogden City. But that's the distinction between Weber County's ordinance and Ogden City's ordinance. Weber County ordinance does allow single-family homes. It does allow farming. It does allow horse pastures. At the same time, it allows coal yards. It allows foundries. It allows a lot of things that are also harmful to adjacent properties, but it allows all of those things together. So the concern that was expressed to the Planning Commission was, what impact to these homes does this annexation and rezoning create? And so you'll find that there were some in the Planning Commission who voted against the zoning of this property, M2, feeling that M2 would be too much of a incompatible use to the neighboring properties, which are in Weber County. So that is a decision that as you look tonight, you'll see that's why a split vote took place in terms of recommendation on the zoning of the property. The majority of the Planning Commission recommended M2. Others were looking for a zone that may have a less impact. To help you understand, in Ogden City's ordinance, the differences between M1 and M2, let me just give you a couple of examples of uses allowed in M2 that are not allowed in M1. For example, salvage yards. They're allowed in M2, but not in M1. A couple of things that I had noted that are different is fuel storage, allowed in M2, but not in M1. So like a fuel farm, similar to what we have with Kellerstrasse on 2550. That would not be allowed in M1, but is allowed in M2, which is what Kellerstrasse is zoned. A couple other distinctions would be, let me find, there's one other I saw that was a difference.
Is it the size of the building? Is that different?
No, it's the use. It's the
of it.
land use that could take place.
Greg, it might be well to compare what is allowed in the county's M1 versus the Ogden City's M2. Is there what would be the difference there?
Well, the county's M1, there's a couple things I said are not permitted: the homes, the horse pastures. The other things that are allowed in the county's M1, contractor shops, fuel yard, coal and fuel yards, wood, coal, contractors' business. They allow sheet metal work. They allow sign companies. They allow auto sandblasting, kennels, machine shops, glass foundaries, clay and brick.
There are many uses in their M1 that aren't allowed until our M2.
M1. That become an M2 use. The clay and brick yard, for example,
Right.
would not is an M2 in ours, but is allowed an M1 in theirs.
Okay, thank you.
So the Planning Commission's recommendation is that it would be appropriate to annex this property into Ogden City and give it the zoning designation of M2.
Name some of the worst uses for M2 in that, next to a neighborhood is what I'm asking.
Well, I think
Next to
the
a
ones I mentioned, the salvage yard, the
It would be
fuel
allowed,
storage.
that's what I'm understanding.
Is what's allowed in M2, but not in M1.
Okay.
So I think those are the two most drastic that are different between M1 and M2 in Ogden City.
Greg, I know we had discussion in the past about how we could or could not do a buffer between the homes and the zone. Do you want to kind of discuss that a little bit?
Well, one of the discussions, and again, if you look at the Planning Commission recommendation too, there was some question about what can we do to provide a better buffer, and some feeling a lower zone may do that. Our ordinance, the way it is written, says that a residential zone has to be buffered from a manufacturing zone, so that if say, for example, if this was zoned residential, then we would require landscape buffering and setbacks and walls to take place to separate the uses. But if it's just a residential use but not zoned, our ordinance does not require any buffering in any of the manufacturing zones. So the discussion was, if a use comes in that's a conditional use, the Planning Commission can always look at buffering and protections for a conditional use, but a permitted use, there is no requirement for that buffering. So you take your chance that if it's a conditional use, there could be buffering, but there's nothing required if it's a permitted use of what may go in the annexed land.
What would happen in the future if that property where the residents are located, if we annex that down the road and they're still there? How does that apply?
They're allowed to continue. They're just like in other areas in the city where we've got manufacturing zones, we've got residents there. They're allowed to continue. They're considered non-conforming uses, and they're allowed to continue. It's just up to the property owner what they decide to do with the property at that point.
Would a buffer have to be established?
It still would not, because the zoning is manufacturing.
So just hashing a little bit more, then we really don't have an avenue to require any sort of buffering to that.
Under our present regulations, we don't. It's just more looking at the intensity of uses between M1 and M2.
And Greg, the three commissioners who voted against the M2, were they preferring M1?
They were preferring something that would be lesser that could try to provide protection to the homes.
Okay.
So M1 would probably have been the lesser, because, again, the policy declaration says that this area is an industrial area, and that's where we had envisioned it going since the late 70s.
And the little tiny piece down in the lower corner, that's M2, correct?
This piece right here, huh?
Yeah, so that's consistent with the piece that we're proposing.
Yeah, as well as the across the street. M2.
Okay.
But the other side of the railroad tracks are M1, right?
This part is M1, and this is M1 in the county.
What about the other side of Midland Drive? What, do you know what that is?
Well, this is M2.
That is M2, okay.
Excuse me. Any other questions of me?
Further questions? Okay, thank you. Okay, as part of the public hearing, if there's any public that would like to come up at this time and specifically talk about the West Ogden annexation, you're welcome to come up, and please state your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes. Okay. No public?
Mr. Chair, I move that we close the public hearing.
I second it.
We have a motion from Councilmember Heyer and a second from Councilmember Stevens to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, can I just clarify one thing that regarding the buffering issue, the council does have the ability with a different ordinance to modify the requirements. It's just not available to you tonight if you chose to.
Well, I would certainly be interested in exploring that possibility.
Didn't we, however, though, when there's a petition that comes for its use to look at the desirability of a buffer at that point?
And the Planning Commission would look at that too.
Montgomery, address that if you would.
Maybe I could address that. If someone has made an application for a use, at that time they have created a vested right in that use. So even though you may want to look at it, you couldn't act on that individual item once they've filed a request to do a use on the property. So that's the danger you run into under that scenario.
So it might be more important to act separately. And I guess my other concern with that would be that, that could be past this council's time and no one would know we were interested in a buffer if we are.
I think we need to do what's appropriate for the residents in that area.
So I guess if there's no further discussion, I would make the recommendation that we approve this, but with the idea that we explore buffering as a separate issue. Can I do that as part of the?
I'm not sure that you need to as part of the motion.
After the motion?
Yes.
Okay.
If the council gives direction to consider that, we'll certainly develop that for you. Yes.
So I would just make a motion to approve.
Yeah. No, I think we're through discussion, but my concern too is...
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, you need a second before you have discussion.
So we have a motion from Councilmember Gochner, and
I second it.
And a second from Councilmember Stevens to adopt the proposed ordinance 2012-14. This is a roll call vote.
Mr. Chair, you can have further discussion.
Oh, that's what I thought we were just doing, was further discussion on...
That's fine. Yeah.
You need a second before you...
Okay, so...
Okay. My question is, as slow as government works, I can tell you right now, by the time we go through and do a buffer on this, I don't think it's going to happen quickly, would it, Greg? How long would that take? And then we're leaving people hanging out there saying, well, we really want you to have a buffer, but it takes us forever to get it done.
Mr. Chair.
And that's my concern.
I'm not sure Mr. Montgomery can address the timeline. I mean, that would be in a council initiative. Ordinance would have to be drafted and considered, Planning Commission recommendation, et cetera. It would take some time. I don't think you can address it for this particular consideration. And they, as Mr. Montgomery indicated, they have a vested right based on what was in place when they filed a petition for annexation.
Okay, so we've had further discussion. We had a motion from Councilmember Gochner and a second from Councilmember Stevens. Correct? To adopt this proposed ordinance 2012-14. It's a roll call vote.
Councilmember Gochner.
Aye.
Councilmember Heyer.
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens.
Aye.
Councilmember Van Hoosier.
No.
Councilmember Wicks.
No.
Vice Chair Blair.
Aye.
Chair Garner.
Aye. This passes. And
may I speak to the reason
please.
why I voted no? I just think people have a right to live in a neighborhood that they've lived in their whole lives and not be overrun by an industrial zone for which we do not know what's going to go in it in the first place. Nothing has ever been brought forward or proposed, and so that's why I have a no vote.
Something along those lines would be the reason for my no vote, with the concern that it could have a real impact on the residential neighborhood in the area.
And at this time, can we also give direction to council staff to help us develop this information on further looking at the buffer zone and what we can do? And
yes, so noted. We'll add that to your considerations for.
Thank you. Because I think that will be appropriate for this, but there may be other sites too, as Mr. Montgomery, there's probably several little peninsulas throughout the city that we need to look at this for. So thank you. Next on the agenda is the Giles subdivision annexation. Proposed ordinance 2012-15. Mr. Montgomery.
This also is a petition the Planning Commission has received and is forwarding on to you with a recommendation. And this is just a little ways down the tracks. Here was the property you talked about just in the last request. This is the property we're looking at in this petition. Again, as you can see, M2 zoning located here. The actual petition, the two who signed the petition were these two lots that are in yellow. Again, the city boundary is in here. So in order to be contiguous to properties, which is one of the requirements of state law, this property also is being considered for annexation right here. That property owner did not file the petition, but because these two properties did file the petition and they meet the requirements of ownership and majority of ownership and property value, the city can require the other property to be annexed in at this same time. So what would this do? What this would do is then create all this area now in Ogden City, and then leave only these two lots of the Giles subdivision still in Weber County. These are undeveloped lots, as are these lots also. And so when future development is proposed, they would also have to come in and annex and before they could build.
And we can't do that prior?
We can't do that because, again, we have to have the majority of the property owners and 2/3, but if you add this, now we're at 50%, so then that would not meet the requirement. The Planning Commission looked at this and felt this was consistent also with the annexation policy. The M2 zoning would be appropriate for this property since that is what these lots are in the same subdivision. This is all an industrial area. There are no other buildings but industrial buildings in this location. And so the recommendation is to annex this property into Ogden City and rezone it to M2.
And the vote on this was 8-0.
Was unanimous on this one.
And then this is just on the other side of the small piece that we talked about in the last.
We talked about this piece.
And then there's that small corner piece that was M2. And then this now will be M2 also. And then the area around it is.
This is still unincorporated county. This area right here. But as you start filling in those peninsulas and start getting this all the way we should have it in the future, all in Ogden City.
Okay. And the area closer to Midland Drive, that is not annexed into the city currently? That's still unincorporated?
This property right here is in unincorporated county.
But it is developed?
This property is Ogden City, yes. This has been developed for many years in the county. And this is when Bonavista had the water and we did not have any city boundaries adjacent to them, so we could not annex it. One of the things is you have to have a contiguous piece to then move the city boundaries forward. And so where we did not have anything that was adjacent, we didn't have these or any of that, we could not annex them when they were developed.
And there is no sewer service there?
Well, those are things that we're going to be looking at because now we do service sewer and water in these areas. All these properties now receive Ogden City water. And so there's been some recent changes in state law that allow us to look at service delivery as means of annexation. And so there's certain things we have to follow with that, but those are future things we'll be looking at.
Any further questions for Mr. Montgomery? Okay, thank you, sir. And this is a public hearing, so if there is anyone from the public that would like to come up at this time and address the Giles subdivision annexation, we'd welcome you up at this time. Please state your name and address, and you're limited to 5 minutes. Okay.
Seeing no movement, I'll move to close the public hearing.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Heyer and a second from Vice Chair Blair to close the public hearing. This is a roll call vote. All in favor?
Actually, sorry. Yeah. Gotcha.
Yes.
I'm with you.
Any roll call vote? All in favor to close the public hearing?
Voice vote to close.
Voice vote. Aye?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Here, can you do that over, please?
That's what I was trying to do. We have a motion from Councilmember Heyer and a second from Vice Chair Blair to close the public hearing. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The public hearing is closed at this time, and now we'll have further discussion on this issue from council members.
If there's no further discussion, I would make a motion to adopt proposed ordinance 2012-15.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Gochner and a second from Vice Chair Blair to adopt proposed ordinance 2012-15. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Heyer?
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens?
Aye.
Councilmember Van Hoosier?
Aye.
Councilmember Wicks?
Aye.
Councilmember Gochner?
Aye.
Vice Chair Blair?
Aye.
Chair Garner?
Aye. This passes. Thank you. Next on the agenda is public comments. This is an opportunity to address the council regarding your concerns or ideas. Please state your name for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes. In this form of government, all city personnel are the responsibility of the administration, not of the council. Please discuss any concerns you may have regarding staff with the mayor, chief administrative officer, or department directors. No public comments. Comments from administration.
Quickly, I'd like to echo the thoughts on the 9/11 anniversary today and the thoughts and prayers that goes to those families. And I'd like to thank you, Chair Garner, for representing Ogden City, and Chief Matthews at the Firefighters Memorial on Saturday. I was out of town for that, and I heard great things about that, and it's very timely that we were there and able to have that event in our community. So I appreciate you guys doing that, and certainly appreciate the thoughts and prayers and the concerns you addressed earlier.
Thank you. Comments from council staff?
Nothing tonight, thanks.
Council members?
I attended the gang conference this past week, and it was very well done and presented to not only the law enforcement, but the school districts and the educators were involved with that. And it's just an element of gangs and drugs that we need to eradicate out of our community so that we can provide a wholesome life for all those that reside here. So.
And just to echo on that, our local police department did a wonderful job of organizing that and putting it together. We had a great turnout, as we always do, but it was very valuable for information for all those who serve our city. And thank you for mentioning the Fallen Firefighters Memorial. I would just encourage residents and others, if you haven't taken the time to visit that memorial, it's beautiful, it's well done, it's right here in the gardens of the municipal building. And Chief Matthew and Captain Rich King did a great job of putting that together, so thank you. Okay, motion?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
We have a motion from Councilmember Wicks and a second from Councilmember Heyer to adjourn the City Council meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We'll now adjourn. As a reminder, we have a City Council work session. The purpose of the work session is to receive a transit presentation for Portland and Eugene, Oregon, and to discuss municipal ward boundaries and council business. So thank you all very much.